Let's say someone listening to this podcast is running a business and they're thinking about usage-based business, like how you think about that as strategic to the business.
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to think about it is that it kind of goes back to this pricing to value concept. So you are now linking your pricing, your revenue model to the value that you generate. What that means is that the value chain starts with the enterprise seller is selling your software and it's selling in a value case. Now, that enterprise seller is probably selling like a credit buy for $1 million of credits that spend down as the customer starts using your product. Let's say it's a data warehouse or something like that. The sales process is fundamentally very different than in a seat subscription model where you take $1 million up front and you just like kind of recognize the revenue, divide by 12 every month. In a usage world, actually now that seller doesn't get paid commission until the product is actually used. So now that seller's entire incentive structure,
assuming you have a reasonable comp.
Yeah, exactly right.
Which by the way, people get wrong all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that's an exception. Most people just like they get the worst of both worlds. They basically pay you out for the $1 million contract, and then they only get to recognize revenue when the usage is accrued.
Yeah.
So yes,
and by the way, there's just the reason I actually interjected. It's just important to realize like how much this impacts the business broadly, including things like sales comp, sales behavior, post-sales, customer success.
Exactly right. Well, so I think, and I think the key is again, it's about how do you generate and capture value, but the value generation starts in the like office of the CRO. Then the product has to come and actually fulfill the thing, and the customers have to actually use it and figure out how to use it. That's like a success thing. It's a product thing. It's an engineering thing. And then finally, at the end of the month, quarter, whatever, you get to recognize revenue. And so what it means is that usage kind of, I think of it very in a like pure sense. It's like, oh, we finally have perfectly aligned incentives with our customers, right? They only pay us when they use it. We only, like our sales team is incentivized to not get like a user that just gives us a bunch of money and then doesn't use the product. Actually, they're incentivized to find good customers for us. Product is incentivized to build product that actually drives usage. Finance is now able to like recognize revenue in a way that corresponds to the value that we create. In a theoretical sense, everything is beautiful. The problem is we have like 30 years of Silicon Valley where various parts of the company were actually not incentivized to put more value into the product. A good example is, again, I love Dropbox. Drew, you're an incredible person, but the commercial model of Dropbox it was a team-based thing, number of users. It incentivized us to get really good at getting a wall-to-wall deployment. Did not incentivize us at all to drive incremental usage. In fact, in a very literal sense, you didn't want people to maximize their usage of quota because the customers at the P99 of usage actually were margin negative. So in fact, like your product is actually like, we want to get you to have like 7 files in there, not 7,000. And I think in a usage-based model, it kind of theoretically aligns everyone's incentives toward the same thing. But the problem is that most business units they're like fundamentally, that's not how they operate today. And so when you're adopting a usage-based model, I think the way I like to put it to my team is when we're talking to a sales deal, if I can't talk to the CEO of that company, it's not a real deal because the CEO has to be like, I'm going to take the hard path. I'm going to build a company around like value creation and capture. And I'm going to make sure that sales is aligned to it. I'm going to make sure that customer support is aligned to it. I'm going to make sure product is, finance, all that stuff. That's a business transformation. That's a big deal. And fundamentally, it's just not how most businesses in Silicon Valley work today. And so when I'm thinking about like advising that theoretical company about this, my literal first recommendation is like, are you ready? Are you gonna commit to it? Because if you're not, then you can't just like change your pricing and have it magically work out. You actually have to change all the incentives along the way in order for it to stick.
So what